fortune, luck, call it what you will. There are those who believe that you're own and those who believe that a higher involved somewhere along the line. 76-year-old Mulvey Wright subscribed to the higher force theory. In January 2006, Mrs. Wright received a letter from a well-wisher containing worrying news. The letter writer said they'd been walking down this lane past Mrs. Wright's house when they'd received a feeling of great evil. So evil, in fact, that they hadn't dared knock on the door. Fortunately, the letter continued, if Mrs. Wright bought some special oil to burn, she'd be able to get rid of the bad spirits. Mrs. Wright reached for her chequebook. Mulvey Wright lived next door to her daughter Louise. She was a fit, active woman, but prone to depression. At the time, she was going through a particularly bad patch and vulnerable to anyone who wanted to take advantage.
My husband had to help her out by writing a couple of cheques once because her chequebook had run out, and she told him about it, and I said, you know, I really think this is a scam, Mum. It's not genuine. And she got quite cross with me for being so negative about it. I think that was the start of it really taking a grip.
Indeed, within weeks, the letters were coming thick and fast. Mrs. Wright's name was now on a so-called sucker list, and the pseudo-psychics smelt cash.
They sell on the details of people who've been proven to fall for this type of scam. So if you've fallen once and you've responded, you will then be inundated, sometimes with thousands of items of junk mail in a year.
Psychic scamming letters annually net around £40 million. About $170,000 are conned every year. That's a lot of people. So why are so many falling for it? A lot of it's to do with your personality type.
We all differ in terms of what's called locus of control, and the idea of locus of control is some people have an internal locus of control. They think that they are responsible for the things that happen to them in their lives. Other people have an external locus of control. They think that things happen to them and that there are forces operating out there that can work either to their advantage or to their disadvantage, and of course it's people with an external locus of control who are more likely to fall for these scams.
And then there's the question of timing. Send out enough letters and you're bound to find someone desperate enough to respond.
Imagine that you're 80. You lost your husband last year, friends in the last 5 years. You feel lonely and isolated. You get a letter through from someone who appears to know everything about you. They then promise you all of these wonderful things, but there's a warning with that letter saying that there's somebody who wishes you evil or that something awful could happen to your loved ones. You're feeling vulnerable at the time and you may well respond. And if you do, that unfortunately is the start of a much, much bigger problem.
By May, Mulvey Wright was starting to get hundreds of letters and was sending off around £400 a month.
She started to talk as if she was short of money, which we knew what her outgoings were, we knew what her pension was, and we couldn't understand why she was feeling short of money, because there's no way that she should have been.
Reputable psychics say this sort of operation's giving the industry a bad name. Eamon Flanagan, in the business for 25 years, says it should be about helping people.
To a time of work also, new work, opening up opportunities. The most important thing about a reading is to give someone hope. It's to give them opportunities to see what the potentials are, you know, even in width and in disaster, that you give them hope and a way of coming out of it.
So you try to help people?
Yes.
What do you think then about people who send unsolicited letters asking for money?
Well, I think it's despicable. It's playing on people's vulnerability.
In January this year, Mrs. Wright died from a brain hemorrhage. It was then that her daughter Louise finally found out just how deeply she'd been sucked in.
There were these strange kind of talismans and funny things stuck kind of in cupboards and places that you wouldn't see all over the place. And I started to realise, you know, how important it was to her. And there was the calendar that I found in her bedroom as well, which showed kind of rituals that she'd written down that she had to do, sometimes kind of 2 or 3 a day, and it was just full of all this stuff.
So by this stage this was ruling her life?
It must have been, yeah.
So basically your mother spent the last months of her life...
Yeah.
Wasting it?
Yeah, absolutely. And not being very happy either.
What do you think about the people who did this?
I think that they make their money out of vulnerable people, and I feel very angry about what they do.
The con artists know they're unlikely to be caught. Last year, this woman, Gina Stevenson, was jailed for 15 months after fleecing more than £60,000 from customers she claimed to have cursed. But most are operating abroad and are virtually untraceable. Fortunately, as it turns out, it's surprisingly easy to influence your own destiny with this sort of thing. Next time you get one of these letters, don't even open it. Just do this. Rip it up and throw it away.
Is that what you would do, Andrew?
Yeah, and it's easy for me because I could almost laugh and say, how can anybody be so dumb? But people are vulnerable, people are naive, and it's very sad. And they prey on those people, and it is absolutely terrible.
I must say, watching that film, I just thought it was so sad that this lady ended her life, you know, spending all that money, I mean, not doing any good. As her daughter said, she wasn't any happier for it. And actually, I've had a voicemail from Eric. Thank you, Eric, for this. He says, I've been getting mail from abroad from these scammers for the last 2 years, and I'm fed up with it. There should be a law against it. Do you think there could be a law against it?
But it's very hard to enforce it because these people disappear, and at the end of the day, if people want to give money, you can't exactly stop them. I just hope now they've watched that. If they do get the letter, bin it.
Rip it up. Bin it, that's the phrase for today. Well, actually, we're not going to bin the papers just yet because we're going to take a look at some of the religious and ethical hot potatoes behind this week's headlines. And the first one, Danny, really has you all over it. It's